right, so welcome to Caribbean Thought. Um, Welcome, guys. So you guys will get to come. What we will do today is that you will continue to introduce yourselves by talking about yourselves and what you hope to get out of the class, and sharing your reflection on the Afrocentric paradigm. Okay. I'm going to who goes next? I'm going to ask Chantel to moderate this section. Okay, Chantel.
Yes, sir. I'm here, sir. Hello?
All right, but now I'm gonna pull up these people. I'm gonna remember it. That's the definition. When I was given this paper to write, it brought me back to when I was much younger and I was learning about social studies and history. And there were so many questions that were never nobody could really answer it regarding the rich cultures, the facts, and the timeline of certain events that took place in heritage in our region, which made me excited to read Miss Mazama's article, serving as a reminder that we are more than survivors, we are a force. The Afrocentric paradigm. Firstly, I have never even heard the word paradigm much more Afrocentric before this class. So imagine me reading this article. After I began to reading it, I have noticed the emphasis on the importance of African culture and its experience as it has been particularly significant influence on my life. The paradigm is a reminder that we are more than survivors, we are a force. And for me, the Afrocentric paradigm is about embracing our African culture, not just talking about when we were slaves. In the new world, it's about recognizing that in many ways we are history, we are language, we are tradition, we are everything that African heritage had to offer, as well as what we brought over to the Caribbean, and the colonizers tried to take from us. As the great poet Derek Walcott said, the Afrocentric paradigm is a way of reclaiming our past, of repossessing our heritage, and redefining our future. So basically, hold on. Chantel.
Hello.
About mystery, huh? How the stay on here.
Can you show me the mic, please?
Recently, there was a discussion in one of the classes at Temple University in the Africology and African American Studies department about who is Afrocentric or not, based on various measures of what is employed by the student in his or her own understanding of the texts concerning the foundation of knowledge and the corruption of cultures which persist. In fact, what seems to have been unclear among the students was whether there was any difference between Afrocentrism and Afrocentric. Yet, no one mentioned Afrocentrism. No one mentioned Afrocentrism. Rather, the students, in my estimation, spoke of Afrocentricity as the highest political tradition of Afrocentrism or African liberation. Some students argued that Du Bois was not Afrocentric, and so too was Fanon, because they were not centered on Africa and still relied on European traditions within their strategies. It was as if Du Bois and Fanon were not significant because they were not Afrocentric enough. Regardless, what they were was part of a tradition we call Afrocentrism.
I find intriguing about the Afrocentric paradigm is it stresses the impact of community and collective identity in the Caribbean, which was mind blowing as we are often taught to prioritize the out of many one people phrase, yet we are unknowingly or pointedly favoring the lighter, straighter haired while we may say we're ignorant is bliss. In this case, it has not been. We have frankly been cut off from our deeper side of us based on our ignorance. The Afrocentric paradigm encourages us to think about ourselves as part of a larger community, recognizing that our experiences, struggles, and triumph all intertwine. It is a reminder that we are stronger together when we embrace our heritage as a whole, rather than just the lies that we were fed as children and adults. The Afrocentric paradigm is a way of acknowledging the shared experience we have, don't even realizing that we have it, of recognizing the way in which our histories and cultures have been intertwined. It's a way of celebrating our diversity while also acknowledging our common humanity. As a great Caribbean scholar, C.L.R. James once said, the Afrocentric paradigm is a way of understanding the complexity and multifaceted nature of our Caribbean identity, a way of recognizing the ways in which our African, European, and indigenous heritage have shaped our lives and our. As bear with me, this paper is giving me a warm time. After completing Mazama's work on the Afrocentric paradigm, I'm filled with a sense of hope and optimism. I know that our region is not without its challenges, that we face many obstacles and difficulties as we strive to build a better future for ourselves and our children, by not letting them be as brainwashed as we were. Even in the Bible, we can see how ignorance kept many in bondage, which technically I would say, based on the article, many of us are mentally in bondage because we did not know of any of the information provided. I, for one, did not. But I also know that we have the power to create our own destiny, to shape our own life and our own cultures. The paradigm shows us that we're not just passive recipients of Western culture, but rather active participants in the creation of our own unique culture identity, because we have actively and maybe even openly rejected the notion of us being anything other than what we were told. Because basically, being African pure blood is wrong in some sense, or is that the culture we were taught? In the end, Mazama's work is a call to notion, a call to look deeper, to question more than what we were told, to match it back to biblical knowledge, a gentle reminder that we must take ownership of our own culture and heritage and work to create a brighter future for ourselves and our children. As the great Caribbean poet Camus Brouet once said, the Afrocentric paradigm is a way of reclaiming our past, of repossessing our heritage, and redefining our future. It's a way of recognizing the way in which our African, European and indigenous heritage are our lives and our culture, of celebrating our diversity as well as acknowledging our common humanity. That's the end of my paper.
Thank you very much, Chantal. Next person, please. Introduce yourself and then go ahead with the paper.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I'm Julian Barrett, and this is my second class. I looked at the topic that Sir gave us to do the reflection paper on, and I wrote this paper, which I'm going to share in brief. All right, so in this reflection paper, I will look at the Afrocentric paradigm as described in the book by Dr. Amma Mazama. No, it's not convenient for me to do that,
Okay. Okay.
Miss Barton. I will also be examining how Afrocentrism has been greatly impaired by what appears to be a biased Eurocentric viewpoint, how I go forward as an African descendant, and how a deeper knowledge of my ancestral background can impact my practice of social work, how I can better embrace the culture of my origin. To be honest, this level of study in our African history is new to me. Last week was my first class in this course. Some of these terms I'm just now learning, and I was very intrigued by the knowledge I was exposed to by our facilitator, Reverend McKenzie. I'm seeing where Mr. McKenzie is not afraid to confront our belief system that has been cultivated by the Eurocentric culture. I was also very surprised at how passionate and knowledgeable he was about Black history. You know, most of the material I've interacted with in writing this reflection paper is new, challenging, and scary, but interesting and intriguing at the same time. Could it be that I may have to unlearn some of the things I've been taught by the different agents of socialization? Can I embrace this new knowledge I'm exposed to? I'm certainly going to try. What is Afrocentrism? Afrocentrism is a cultural and political movement whose mainly African American adherents regard themselves as all Blacks, as syncretic Africans, and believe that their worldview should positively reflect traditional African values. The term Afrocentrism or Afrocentricity were coined in the 1980s by African American scholar and activist Molefi Asante. The belief of this group's beliefs, the Afrocentrism argues that for centuries, Africans and other non-whites have been dominated through slavery and colonization by Europeans, and the European culture is at best irrelevant and at worst diametrically opposed to efforts by non-Europeans to achieve self-determination. History. Afrocentrism was influenced by several early nationalist movements, including Ethiopianism and the Pan-Africanism. The latter became a major presence in the United States and elsewhere with the emergence of Jamaican activist Marcus Garvey, who promoted the idea of an African diaspora and called for a separate African state of Black Americans. And that's a little history there. And I'll just jump to the conclusion. This enlightenment serves as a blessing to me as Dr. Mazama stated, Afrocentrism rediscovers, redistributes, and promotes Afrocentricity. I conclude by saying I strongly believe that Caribbean thought should be taught from early childhood to tertiary level. I embrace this movement and I am excited to learn all I can about it, and not only to learn about it, but to actively practice Afrocentricity wherever life takes me. And then I have my references down the bottom here.
Good evening, everyone. I am Nikisha Smith Robertson. I'm currently a fourth-year social work student. And when I was exposed to this material, it's new to me, most of it, but it was also intriguing and also overwhelming because I think it's a lot. And we're going to have to read a whole lot of stuff to really get the understanding, since the material is new and the depth of the study is new to me. I'm not sure about anyone else. So I'm at work, so I'll be brief. The Afrocentric Paradigm contour and definition by Ama Mazamas is very intriguing. It is insightful, and it encourages us to re-examine our understanding of the our African identity and to see the world through the African lens. So the book detailed investigation of Afrocentricity goes beyond academic discussion. It is a powerful wake-up call for the African society to reclaim their African identity, culture, and values in the world that is predominantly shaped by Eurocentric perspective. So we were born in this side, Jamaica, where we are mostly exposed to European beliefs and culture. We know of some of our African culture, but not in depth as this is pushing us to be, which is important because we need to know who we are and where we're from. Additionally, it underscores that African descendants unconsciously adapt to Western worldview and perspective. And to achieve liberalization from the Western thinking, African natives are urged to constantly replace our European modes of thinking, feeling, and being with approaches that resonate with our African cultural experiences. And what was fascinating for me mostly is that her work emphasizes a cultural reclamation and regaining our identity. So she emphasizes that Afrocentricity is crucial to addressing the alteration of African history that has marginalized African descendants while promoting us to believe in European beliefs that we were taught as child and coming up through oppression and slavery. So the call for us to reclaim our identity is important to me and for me to explore who we really are, because we are taught one thing, but now we have to realize our history and culture. And it's a holistic approach because it is notable strength. Her work is notable, has strength for her. There's notable strength in her work as it widened the concept beyond cultural consideration to include education, politics, economic, and spirituality. So it's a multidimensional understanding of the interconnection of the different magnitudes of advocating for the extensive paradigm that address these areas of our life and our beliefs. So in summary, her work is influential and thought-provoking. It intrigues readers to rethink their world perceptions and to engage with their African history and culture. By focusing on African experiences and perspective, the book offers us a choice to reclaim and to actually own who we are and to be comfortable with our own identity. And this brings me back to when I watched some documentary stuff and I realized that a lot of African persons that are living in Africa, they are bleaching. They don't want to be who they are. And even Jamaica, we don't want to be ourselves. We want to be someone else. We have to have certain type of hair, skin color, skin tone, certain type of attire. So we are not embracing our culture. So this is telling us that we should embrace our culture and to accept where we are and to be comfortable in our own skin. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, Nikisha. Next person, please. Hello.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jerome Edwards. Part of my expectation for this class is I probably would want to learn some things new as it relates to, the Afrocentric aspect of the Caribbean, or maybe just to model or learn how to model some kind of how Africa intertwined with the Caribbean on a more, spiritual or psychological level. So I'm just going to read a brief, because I'm at work, about the paper that I wrote, not the whole paper. So in this reflection paper, what I did was to examine Amamazama Afrocentric Paradigm, highlighting its significance in understanding and reclaiming African identity, particularly with the Jamaican context. So what I did was to understand the paper, read the paper, understand the paper, and then see how best it ties in with Jamaica socioeconomic aspects as it relates to everything. Um, the paper discussed several key themes from Mama Zama's work and connects them to Jamaica socioeconomic culture and landscape. One major point is that the Jamaican identity remains deeply influenced by its colonial history, with European tradition shaping language. And I spoke about language in the paper because the Patois language has a very huge element or several elements of the African language or several African language, but we tend to move away from that and then stick to this or want to stick to this standard English. There's a force to communicate in standard English rather than a patois. We see where persons you talk in patois, people say, don't say that, correct that or fix that, if it sound like the way they, and then again we talk about religion in the paper, how religion push to shape the culture of Jamaica versus the religion in Africa, where it's more on a spiritual based level, it's more on a connection based level, it's more of using things to connect with your past, with your, that spiritual being, and also governance, right? However, the Afrocentricity also challenges the notion of Eurocentrism as a universal truth. Um, the resurgence of Rastafarism in Jamaica exemplifies the Afrocentric consciousness by rejecting Eurocentric ideologies and emphasizes African unity. So that's one aspect that she spoke about that can be connected to us today, a sense of unity that derived from the Rastafarism culture. The paper explores the role of education in shaping cultural identity, while Jamaica has integrated Afrocentric content into its curriculum. So there's still a missing gap there, you know, integrating African stuff. So more likely get the history, but the history is more like Western colonial based history rather than back in the African days what they used to do, African roots, African heritage, African history, African month, stuff like that. And then now finally the paper discuss Afrocentricity as an empowering framework rather than one rooted in victimhood by celebrating the resilience and achievements of African descended individuals such as Marcus Garvey contribution to Pan-Africanism. Afrocentric fosters self-determination and challenges historical oppression. So the paper kind of switches the look at Afrocentrism and take away from that, oh, it was this fault, that fault. But let's look at some of the most powerful motivational stuff. Let's look at unity. Let's look at working together. Let's look at coming together as one. So it's really that that I wanted to share. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerome. Another person here.
Good night, everyone. My name is Idras. So I am a second year Art of Theology. So I am in discourse to learn and to find something very important about our root as African people. So I won't be able to read all my papers, so I just going to share my personal reflection on this paper. So I can only say that Mazama discussion of Afrocentricity resonate deeply on both personal and collective level. On a personal level, it invites individuals of African descent to examine the internalized belief and evaluate how they might better align with African centered way of knowing. This process requires a conscious effort to reject Western imposed norms and instead embrace cultural tradition, histories, and philosophies that reflect African experiences and value. Collectively, the implication of Afrocentricity are profound. By fostering a pan-African consciousness, communities can build solidarity and address shared struggle against systemic inequality and cultural erasure. The Afrocentric paradigm provides a framework for reimagining governance, education, and social organization in ways that prioritize African perspectives. It also challenged African descent people to lead global conversation about justice and liberation from a place of authenticity and cultural pride. Ultimately, Mazama's insight highlight the transformative potential of Afrocentricity. By embracing these paradigms, African descent people can reclaim their rightful place at the center of the narrative, reject marginalization, and chart a course toward collective empowerment. This shift from periphery to center is not only an intellectual endeavor, but also a spiritual and cultural renaissance that has the power to redefine identities and reshape the world. So the Afrocentric paradigm serves as both a critique of the current state of African dislocation and a blueprint for liberation. Mazama's insights challenge readers to question the dominance of Eurocentric framework and actively work toward an Afrocentric worldview. By embracing this paradise, African descent, people can move from the margin to the center, reclaiming the history, identity, and agency. Thank you.
Thank you. It was somebody else, please.
I guess I'll try and go quickly. The call volume is low. Can you hear me clearly, Shanti? Let me take off my. All right, into the outro. Let me see if I can put on my audio. My thingy is. Wait, how this come on? All right, can everyone hear me?
Hearing you.
All right, my name is Christina Thomas Palmer, and I'm a third-year social work student. So I'll give a review on my paper that was done by Amazama. So on this paper, it will review the critique and the relevance of Afrocentricity and how the systematic approach in understanding its influence in regards to the paradigm shift that we as a people need to take in order to understand our roots, experience, and identity without the imposition of Western ideology. So the concept was coined by, oh my God, I don't know how to call this word, Malfi, regarding Afrocentricity, have changed the global conversation about Afrocentricity involving Africans' identity and experience. However, it is evident that this work has also created a space where, during the article, you can see where many philosophers try to argue what is Afrocentricity paradigm truly means. But based on my understanding, Afrocentricity is clearly speaking to the problems that African faces due to the overwhelming Western culture that seeks to impose and analyze while interpret the life of African history from a point of view of Western lens. So what this does, it creates a narrative that Africanism never existed before Western ideology, which cannot be true since Africans was already there before quote unquote discovery. This work also look further beyond colonization. This works forces us to look beyond colonization to see our true roots, culture, and experience which was once. The shift is calling for a move away from the dominant Eurocentrism so that we as a people can uphold our African-centered perspective and understanding of our history, culture, and experience, and not only focus on oppression, so that we can go back and recreate our own identity. So in this work, it is clear that, therefore, centralizing African epistemology offers our people the control over our power, experience, and narrative against the leading Western ideology, which has marginalized African perspective for centuries. Moving right along. So based on the article, you can see where culture do play a vital role in Afrocentricity, as it is stated by Amazama that culture is viewed as a shared attitude, perception that guides how a community organize their experiences by placing culture at the center. Afrocentricity, this work challenges the European dominance and aims to restructure how Africans' experience is understood and valued. However, after reviewing this work, it still can be seen where some scholars mistakenly equate being African with Afrocentric, forgetting that Afrocentricity is about an assertive consciousness that claims victory and not oppression. But based on the framework for Afrocentricity and the paradigm shifts surrounding African experience, it can be viewed both from a cognitive and structural aspect. And there's also who the quotes are coming from in the paper. So just to conclude my paper, Afrocentricity is known to be an important framework through which Africans' identity are being reshaped with growing advocacy for recognition of African experience on our own terms rather than through the lens of Western thinking or ideology. And it is important for us as a nation to have a deep understanding into the approach of Afrocentricity so we can find our way back while forming our own narrative and experiences, identity, and culture independently of the Western influences. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Next person, please. I have Diana, Leroy Johnson, Renee Richard Smith, Hello, guys.
So I'm Heather. I am a social work student. I'm in my second year. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you clearly.
Are you hearing me?
Very clearly, Ella. Go ahead. Heather, I was hearing you a while ago. You can go ahead. Do anyone else want to go before her? Jerome, Diana, Renee? Renee.
Jerome went out just now.
Sorry, not Jerome. I mean Leroy. Sorry. Um, Mrs. Allen, I know you haven't. I know you came in class late, but can you please introduce yourself, please? Bertha Coke Allen. All right. So, Diana, let me go ahead and share something with you guys from Sir Paper. Good evening, everyone. I am not sure who was trying to call to me before. I was just pulling in the driveway, trying to hurry, and then I realized I got disconnected. Should I still introduce myself? Is that still the case? Yeah, man, go ahead. It's Italian. All right. I'm not sure of the process here, but hello, everyone. I am Umberta Cook Allen. I am a guidance and counselor student, guidance and counseling student, somewhere in between year 2 and 3. Sir, is there any other thing that you had required for introductions? Is there anything that I'm leaving out?
No, you're good.
All right.
Hold on. Introduce yourself. The year that you're in, and let's tell us why you're doing this class basically. Because since you haven't done the papers yet, because you'd have been new. So right.
Well, I'm doing Caribbean Thought.
Yes. What you expect to learn from it, and yeah, basically.
Okay, well, I'm doing this course mainly because it's one of the prerequisites for my degree, to be honest. After going over combing through the content between last week and the materials are submitted to read this week, I actually hope to learn a lot more correct information. Some of the perspective I had on some things, I realized it was a little bit just standard or misconstrued. So it is my hope to be correct or more edified at the end of this course. At first, I really wasn't sure. This is really inconvenient. This 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. I didn't take online school to still be inconvenient when it comes down to work. So that's messing with me a lot. So I'm really trying my best here. So I'm happy that it's content, that it's engaging, and one that I'm actually happy to learn. Content thus far has been really good. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Mrs. Allen. Diana, can you introduce yourself, please? All right. Good evening again, everyone. My name is Chantel Burton. I am Sir's assistant. I am also a past student from the Jamaica Theological Seminary. All right. I'm going to share with you guys Sir paper. I'm unable to share it on the screen because I'm using my phone at present because I'm at work. But I'm gonna read and share with you guys until Sir comes back.
Good day, everyone. I'm back.
Oh, Sir's back. Awesome. All right, go ahead.
Okay, what's been happening since what happened? What has happened so far?
First thing I'm able to actually share, like Diana, I'm not hearing from her at all. Lyra say he's in a place where that he cannot speak, Heather as well. I haven't heard from Renee, but everybody else actually went and introduced themselves and read the paper.
So everyone has introduced themselves. That was fast. In less than an hour, you guys were able to get all of that completed.
So most of the persons summarize their paper, sir.
Oh, is that so? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So who went? So Heather, you went.
Heather said she couldn't really speak because she's that it is very noisy, but she actually introduced herself. I haven't heard from Diana or Renee. And Lyra said he couldn't speak because where he's at is not conducive to speak at the moment.
Okay. All right.
And because she's new and she introduces herself.
Okay.
At
Great.
the Yes, sir.
All right. Good. Good. All right. And so who hasn't introduced themselves? Will be you said Leroy,
Leroy, Diana,
Diana,
Renee.
Renee. What's going on, Diana? Are you ready, Leroy? Renee.
Leroy said he cannot speak at the moment because he's where he's at is not conducive to speak.
All right. And Diana, you can't share either.
And Renee, I've heard from those two persons, Renee and Diana.
All right. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Well, so but let me ask the class, how did you find the assignment to do the assignment in terms of the reflection on Afrocentric paradigm? How did you guys find it? How did you guys find the paper so far?
Sir,
Yeah, how did you guys find the paper? How did you guys find it?
to write it,
Yeah,
um, it really it really took some deep thinking to really, I mean, because the information is new and to
yes,
process it and then relate it, that was a challenge for me. I'm still processing it, but I tried to relate as much as I could because I
yeah,
just joined the class last week. And as I said in my paper, most of this information, it's very interesting, very intriguing, but very new. So I tried my best to relate what I could based on my reading over this week.
all right, it's good to know, good to know. All right,
But
go ahead.
but it's okay. I'm saying it's really interesting though to know that, you know, I was looking at you, sir. I mean, you're our lecturer and your interest and your passion about this subject area for such a young person. You know, I've never really seen such a young person with that deep knowledge of our African background and that passion as well. It's usually older people like PJ Patterson and those people who push this agenda so much, you know. And
Yes, yes,
my grandfather would always say, you know, give the black man a chance because, you know,
yeah.
when and
I'm
it's just
not that young though, you know. I grew up. I was born 1979.
you're young, sir.
Yeah, fine. I'm
You're
still
young.
young. I guess I'm
You're
still
young,
young. Yes.
but it's an interesting area of study, and I'm really, you know, interested in the area. So I'm really gonna open my ears and my mind and grasp as much as I can because it's really good. It's interesting.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna share. I'm gonna talk about it in a little bit. Anybody else? I'm gonna share some insights I had gleaned when I had to do this assignment, and so I'm gonna talk. And I was taught by Amma Mazama, who wrote the Afrocentric Paradigm. Temple University has there are very few Afroecology departments or colleges that teach Afroecology as a discipline in the US or in the world. I think Temple is one of the few universities. In fact, Temple University was the first one to develop this department of Afroecology and continues the study and the discipline of facilitating Afrocentricity in the world. I'm going to share my insights with you, and I hope you find it interesting. But before I do that, I'm going to I'm going to share a video, and I'm going to bring it up shortly. Give me a second. Let me bring it up here. Go to share my screen. You're seeing it?
No, that's it, sir. It's coming up.
Oh, it's not coming up on your end.
It is there, sir. We're seeing it now.
Let me make sure you guys are hearing the sound. There we All right, I'm going to share a video. Okay.
The world's largest structure, but the British destroyed it. The world's largest structure, but the British destroyed it in 1897.
Wow.
It was 4 times the length of the Great Wall of China.
But they made interconnecting walls that stretched over 10,000 miles.
It was long enough to encircle the continental United States 3 times.
How have I never heard of that? That's what I'm saying. Even the people of Nigeria, now, they don't even know about it.
And yet, few in the West know about it. Even fewer dare talk about one of the greatest achievements in human history, from one of the greatest civilizations in human history. One so great that in order to allow for the pillaging of its people and its resources, all traces of it had to be erased. Its palace, more beautiful than Buckingham Palace at the time, had to be burned, turned to ashes so that they could convince the masses that people of African descent cannot build civilizations. And true to their willingness to diminish this achievement, they labeled this Great Wall as a moat. Really, an insult to the magnificence and splendor of this 8th wonder of the ancient world, the Great Wall of Benin. The Benin Wall was able to encircle not just the capital of the Benin Empire, but several adjacent cities. And it wasn't just a defensive wall, but with its 9,900 miles, it also served as a veritable road network that safeguarded trade and movement of people. You can think about it as a multi-purpose wall. And the civilization that built it is as magnificent as the Great Wall. It's a civilization that had a 7,000-year-old writing system, independent from the hieroglyphs, and a math system using a base 20 and 60, just like the Sumerians. Oh, by the way, there are no independent European and Arab writing or number systems. They all derive from the African hieroglyphs and base 10 number system. Benin City was also one of the first cities to have a semblance of street lighting. Huge metal lamps, many feet high, were built and placed around the city, especially near the king's palace. Fueled by palm oil, their burning wicks were lit at night to provide illumination for traffic to and from the palace. When the Portuguese first discovered the city in 1485, they were stunned to find this vast kingdom made of hundreds of interlocked cities and villages in the middle of the African jungle. They called it the Great City of Benin, at a time when there were hardly any other places in Africa the Europeans acknowledged as a city. Indeed, they classified Benin City as one of the most beautiful and best-planned cities in the world. Benin City's planning and design was done according to careful rules of symmetry, proportionality, and repetition, now known as fractal design. The mathematician Ron Eglash, author of African Fractals, which examines the patterns underpinning architecture, art, and design in many parts of Africa, notes that the city and its surrounding villages were purposely laid out to form perfect fractals, with similar shapes repeated in the rooms of each house, and the house itself, and the clusters of houses in the village in mathematically predictable patterns. As he puts it, when Europeans first came to Africa, they considered the architecture very disorganized and thus primitive. It never occurred to them that the Africans might have been using a form of mathematics that they hadn't even discovered yet. At the center of the city stood the king's court, from which extended 30 very straight, broad streets, each about 120 feet wide. These main...
Are you guys listening? Are you guys watching?
Yes, sir.
Wait, where? This is interesting, yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But very important, when you read books, history books about Africa, you hear about, and the issue of memory is important. I want you to know that memory is important. And memory is part of consciousness. Memory is part of consciousness. All of that is also part of identity. Now, we talk about when you Africologists or Pan-Africanists or Black academics or African academics are now trying to reimagine the African, wherever they are. And when I talk about the African, I'm not necessarily talking about people who live on the continent of Africa today. I'm talking about myself as an of African and who have African ancestry. Whether you're you're part of the diaspora or not, they don't even like using the word diaspora anymore. Okay. Anyways, but when you read books, it was always one that talks about that use language that in terms of words to define those things from Africa. When you think about Africa, you think about colonialism, conquest, slavery. When you think about Africa, you think about how Europe underdeveloped Africa. When you think about Africa, or when you think about blackness, and that is why and then of course people don't want to be black, but yet still, I mean, whatever the case is. But so now when people write in a way now, black academics are now writing to reimagine the black experience, the African experience. And the way they do that, you don't start from the transatlantic, because that's not what it means to be Afrocentric. It means, okay, all right, you start from a position of victory, not a position of oppression. That's part of cultivating an imagery, a memory. That's part of reimagining the truest and purest essence of a thing. And that starts from critical thinking, which is thinking about thinking and thinking about what was previously thought. Now we're hearing about African, and when you watch certain, and even in the Caribbean, back in the days when you watch TV, you see images of the black man, and they show images of a monkey, and so on and so forth. Or when they show blackness or African or whatever, it's always they always use the word primitive, or they talk about primitive civilization. And it's primitive because when the Europeans came to Africa, they never understood what they were seeing. And they never expect any other people to be as advanced, because we live in a world of privilege and position. So the Europeans thought that nowhere else had the kind of intelligence and could contribute to civilization other than they can. And when they came and saw what was in Africa, they thought, oh, that was ridiculous. That they never understood it. They understood it as primitive, but it was actually advanced. Quite interesting.
Main streets, which ran at right angles to each other, had underground drainage made of a sunken impluvium with an outlet to carry away stormwater. Many narrower side and intersecting streets extended off them. In the middle of the streets were turf on which animals fed. Houses are built alongside the streets in good order, the one close to the other, writes the 17th century Dutch visitor Alfred Dapper, adorned with gables and steps. They are usually broad with long galleries inside, especially so in the case of the houses of the nobility, and divided into many rooms which are separated by walls made of red clay, very well erected. But a civilization that looked like this before colonization, and had a palace that looked like this, is rarely mentioned. And its wall, which was defending the city and its memory, has also been forgotten. The British, which can be seen here stealing artifacts from the Palace of Benin after having burned it, also burned the Palace of the Oba along with many other palaces in Benin. Oh, and the Benin Empire had a stone pyramid. There is only one existing blurry picture of it. Here it is, before it was, you guessed it, before it was destroyed. And this is just one of the innumerable African ancient relics that were either intentionally destroyed or simply erased from memory. And if they are not erased, they are reassigned to others such as the Arabs or the Europeans who were not there at the time of their building. All this is
Let that settle in. Let that settle in. Let that settle in. Let that settle in. You talk about control, colonization, so on, but they talk about the issue of erasing from memory. Erasing from memory any idea of sophistication. That's why, when you guys were saying, oh, we didn't know about Egypt being, I'm telling you, this is quite powerful. Let this settle. Let this settle. let this set in. Okay, let's continue.
Contributing to the widespread ignorance from all the Arabs or the Europeans who were not there at the time of their building. All this is contributing to the widespread ignorance from all non-black people about African achievements. Achievements such as the medieval city of Gao in modern-day Mali, where archaeologists found multi-story architecture and a network of underground plumbing. In 1691, the Portuguese ship captain Lourenço Pinto observed, "Great Benin, where the king resides, is larger than Lisbon. All the streets run straight and as far as the eye can see. The houses are large, especially that of the king, which is richly decorated and has fine columns. The city is wealthy and industrious. It is so well governed that theft is unknown, and the people live in such security that they have no doors to their houses." In contrast, London at the same time is described by Bruce Holsinger, professor of English at the University of Virginia, as being a city of thievery, prostitution, murder, bribery, and a thriving black market made the medieval city ripe for exploitation by those with a skill for the quick blade or picking a pocket. The city was split into 11 divisions, each a smaller replication of the king's court, comprising a sprawling series of compounds containing accommodation, workshops, and public buildings, interconnected by innumerable doors and passageways, all richly decorated with the art that made Benin famous. The city was literally covered in it. The exterior walls of the courts and compounds were decorated with horizontal ridge designs, agben, and clay carvings portraying animals, warriors, and other symbols of power. The carvings would create contrasting patterns in the strong sunlight. Natural objects, pebbles or pieces of mica, were also pressed into the wet clay, while in the palaces pillars were covered with bronze plaques illustrating the victory deeds of former king and nobles. At the height of its greatness in the 12th century, well before the start of the European Renaissance, the kings and nobles of Benin City patronized craftsmen and lavished them with gifts and wealth in return for their depiction of the kings and dignitaries' great exploits in intricate bronze sculptures. These works from Benin are equal to the very finest examples of European casting technique, wrote Professor Felix von Luschen, formerly of the Berlin Ethnological Museum. Benvenuto Cellini could not have cast them better, nor could anyone else before or after him. Technically, these bronzes represent the very highest possible achievement. The early foreign explorers' descriptions of Benin City portrayed it as a place free of crime and hunger, with large streets and houses kept clean, a city filled with courteous, honest people, and run by a centralized and highly sophisticated bureaucracy. Which was renowned for its quality and intricate 10,000 miles. That's 16,000 kilometers. That is simply immense. Benin Empire built a wall that can go 3 times around the United States. In terms of the volume of earth moved, the construction of the walls of Benin is believed to surpass that of the Great Pyramid of Giza, showcasing the immense labor force and engineering skills of the Edo people. The earth had to be dug, moved, baked into bricks, then placed on the 20-feet-high wall. So building a pyramid as a side project would have been easy. Out of all the ancient African historical artifacts that I'm most in pain of losing to colonization, this one hurts me the most. Not the broken nose of the clearly black African Sphinx, not the yet-to-be-deciphered Meroitic scripts that historians clearly ignore because it was Nubian, not the hieroglyphics-like writing that was burned in the Great Dutch Purge of Great Zimbabwe, not the bricks palaces in Cameroon, Ivory Coast, or all over West Africa, not the destruction of Carthage by the Romans. No, the lost pyramid in the Kingdom of Benin hurts me the most. From its outline, we can see that it is majestic. We can even see that there is some form of a statue on top. In fact, here is an old comparison from Mr. Imhotep on the Oba's pyramid. "10,000 miles. That's 16,000 kilometers. That is simply immense. Benin Empire built a wall that can go 3 times around the United States. In terms of the volume of earth moved, the construction of the walls of Benin is believed to surpass that of the Great Pyramid of Giza, showcasing the immense labor force and engineering skills of the Edo people. The earth had to be dug, moved, baked into bricks, then placed on the 20-feet-high wall. so building a pyramid as a side project would have been easy. The kingdom is renowned for its intricate bronze, ivory, and wood carvings, which were not merely decorative but served as historical records and religious symbols. The Benin bronzes, a collection of plaques and sculptures, adorned the royal palace and depicted scenes of court life, mythology, and significant events. These artworks demonstrated a high level of technical skill in metalworking. The lost wax casting technique used by Benin artisans allowed for remarkable detail and realism. European explorers and traders were astounded by the quality of these pieces, often comparing them favorably to the finest European art of the time. Two of my favorite pieces are this warrior plaque with both realism and cubism motifs, and this unbelievably lifelike bronze carving of the Queen. The artistic flair shown by the artist is stunning, but to do this on a bronze statue in medieval era shows what Western Africa smelting had going on. But on a religious level also, just like with many African nations, the similarities are striking. The Egyptians worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with specific roles and attributes. Key deities included Ra, the sun god, Osiris, god of the afterlife, and Isis, goddess of magic and motherhood. Similarly, the Benin Kingdom had a polytheistic religion with a range of gods and spirits. These included gods associated with natural elements like Olokun, god of the sea, and Ogun, god of iron and war. The king was considered a divine entity in both civilizations. The Oba, king of Benin, was also seen as a divine figure, believed to be a descendant of the god Oduduwa and an intermediary between the gods and the people. The Oba played a crucial role in religious ceremonies and was integral to the spiritual well-being of the kingdom. Ancestor worship and ritual offerings were both practiced. All these similarities, and I am passing on many, all these similarities were also present in Nubia and in the majority of great African empires. And there is a simple answer. In ancient Egypt, Kemet was an African civilization, just like Benin. An early European explorer that visited the kingdom of Benin were awestruck. Also, did you notice how any black African civilization is not called a civilization, but is called kingdoms and empire? Except from the ones that they tried to steal, like the Garamantes, ancient Egypt, Carthage, or the early Sumerians. This is all part of the elaborate deception played on people of Khal background to make them believe that Africa was not civilized. As I mentioned in my last video, the only good thing about this position stating that black had no civilization and thus did not have intelligence is that we only have to find one. And yet there are so many. We mentioned 42 in our last video. We will add another one today. The form.
Black people had no civilization because they weren't intelligent. Black people weren't supposed to be intelligent. They weren't supposed to have religion. They weren't supposed to have in any kind of intelligence. They weren't supposed to, okay, quite powerful, quite interesting. And this is good.
And yet there are so many.
Sorry, our Sunday.
In my last video, the only good thing about this position stating that black had no civilization and thus did not have intelligence is that we only have to find one.
Did I sound far, guys?
Yes, sir, you did. But the audio for the video is fine.
Okay. But how you finding it interesting so far? This is good when you start to dig deep and you find that a lot. Some of the artifacts, some of the ideas, some of the modus operandi, some of what you find in some of the religions of the world today come from African civilization. You always hear about Mutabaruka talk about Osiris and so on. And you thought he was what he is, but then you realize, oh, there was actually that God that was the God that was created from ancient Africa that have been morphed into some of the ideas of what we call gods today. It's quite powerful, quite powerful. But listen to this point.
Stating that black had no civilization and thus did not have intelligence is that we only have to find one.
Primarily built for the chiefs, the different segments of the
And yet there are so many. We mentioned 42 in our last video. We will add another one today. The formidable kingdom of the Bamalinka, who built 80 feet high wooden palaces, ornately decorated. We are lucky enough to have video of the constructions of these palaces. This video dates back to the early 1900s. Today, the descendants of the Benin Empire have become some of the most successful people in the whole world. In fact, Nigerians Americans are amongst the wealthiest and most educated group in America. They consistently outperform in higher education rankings and household income rankings. Nigeria itself is the biggest economy in Africa, now surpassing Egypt and South Africa. The royal lineage of the kingdom has been preserved. And the king of the Benin Empire, just like his counterpart in the Ashanti Kingdom, can be seen when one visits Nigeria. So, no, it is not evidence that is lacking to show that people of African descent, the children of the Nubio-Kemetic civilization complex, it is not evidence that is lacking to show that they not only started and spread civilization to the whole world, but in Africa, south of the Sahara, they built some of the greatest civilization and some of the greatest historical structures, edifices that colonization sought to destroy and hide, but that we are today unearthing and bringing to light of our collective consciousness. Anyone who has ever clicked the like button, saved our videos in their favorites, shared our videos on social media, or contributed on
The link is also available in JTS Online. I post this video up on that for you to watch if you guys want to. Let me stop sharing my screen. Any question about the video you guys just watched? As we continue to contend for a Caribbean identity, a Caribbean thought, a Caribbean study, consciousness that begins from a position of victory and not one that is of or on one that is not oppressive. Okay, so this was quite. What are your thoughts so far, guys? All right. Let me go back to sharing my screen, and then I'm going to so you guys all have introduced yourself. Let me go back to JTS Online. Where is that?
Sir, you know the fan icon and I raise.
Really, you're raising your hand?
My hand is tired. Yes, sir.
I don't see
All
it.
right. So, so watching the video, sir, it was interesting and intriguing to me because in my mind, hear me now. I don't know
Patreon or
if
YouTube membership has contributed.
Sorry, go ahead.
Have you ever seen these videos where you see some African tribe and it's like the language that they're speaking is like you just don't understand nothing, like them clang 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 with them tongue. And for me, I am wondering how these people were so brilliant. I don't know. I'm trying to break it down for you.
You know, in
other words, I just feel like Africans are backward because of what I have been fed.
Yes.
So we just
Yes.
feel like them not have sense. Then if we can't put it like that, but that's not really sense. It's just them expose me growing up. It's like seeing these things like what kind of maths, how did they even invent these things? It don't look like all the world they pick us.
Yes.
I
Yes.
feel like we're not a brain. So this is just, you serious? It's like,
But,
are you serious? We're this smart?
you know, since we're talking about that and the indomitability of the African, let me share another video with you because you're gonna like it. In fact, let me bring up the video now. Bring it up here. Let me stop sharing my screen and bring up a video that you guys are going to find quite interesting. Exploring Jamaican African religious traditions. We'll talk about that. We'll share that video later on. Here we go. So I can share this. There we go. I can share that screen. So let's go back to this. Let's share my screen again. C.L.R. James talking about the African. Let's bring it back up here. C.L.R. James, here we go. I believe this is the one.
Students with ADHD save 10 hours studying with this Chrome extension. But no, by all means.
Christopher Columbus landed first in the New World at the island of San Salvador, and after praising God, inquired urgently for gold. The natives, Red Indians, were peaceable and friendly and directed him to Haiti, a large island, nearly as large as Ireland, rich, they said, in the yellow metal. He sailed to Haiti. One of his ships being wrecked, the Haitian Indians helped him so willingly that very little was lost, and of the articles which they brought on shore, not one was stolen. The Spaniards, the most advanced Europeans of their day, annexed the island, called it Hispaniola, and took the backward natives under their protection. They introduced Christianity, forced labor in mines, murder, rape, bloodhounds, strange diseases, and artificial famine by the destruction of cultivation to starve the rebellious. These and other requirements of the higher civilization reduced the native population from an estimated 500,000, perhaps 1 million, to 60,000 in 15 years.
And thus it is that Dr. C.L.R. James, a very distinguished scholar, reads the first 2 paragraphs of his prologue, a remarkable book, a classic, The Black Jacobins, which deals with the Toussaint Louverture-led black slave rebellion in San Domingo 2 years after the French Revolution. In these 2 paragraphs, Dr. James, your style of writing, of course, is a very salubrious one indeed, but the bite, the irony, and the truth, you might say, of white man in all these years, of Western civilization so-called, in these 2 paragraphs, you've almost essentialized it.
Yes, I think so, and I wrote it quite naturally. I didn't have to search, but I am a West Indian, and we in the West Indies are very much aware of the contrast between what the white man says and what he does, because we are Western civilized in our orientation, so we are aware of all the things he's saying, much more than people who speak a different language or live a different type of civilization.
This very point you make, which you point out, Professor James is now visiting professor at the Northwestern University. The fact that you're West Indian, this has always been a fascinating historical point, isn't it? We think among the leaders and the whole black liberation movement through the years have been West Indians.
Yes, we have had a whole lot of them. We have had Marcus Garvey. We have had Aimé Césaire, the poet, with that magnificent poem on Africa in which he stated the question of negritude. We have had René Marin, who won the Prix Goncourt with the book Batouala on Africa. We have had George Padmore, Marcus Garvey, as I said, and we have had, there's no doubt about it, that Malcolm X's mother was a West Indian, and that had something to do with it, and Stokely Carmichael was born and grew up there as a boy. I also took some part. I believe it is something that is worthwhile, and I know and feel myself as a West Indian as Padmore was.
It's as though two two cultures are fused, in a sense.
Yes, we are not admitted completely into the Western culture, but we have all the possibilities of developing it. So on being kept back at home, we went abroad and made the best use of both the opportunities of education and the impulse towards freedom, which we felt in the islands. That is the reason why.
This is quite powerful. This is quite powerful. When you watch, I can't see myself. When you watch the video earlier, the 15-minute video about Benin and how, and the true history of Africa that has been corrupted and bastardized and wiped out to create the narrative or to support the narrative that Africans aren't intelligent. And many of their civilizations were stolen and incorporated into the civilizations we live in today, and which has been passed off as theirs. But a very important point, he says that about the West Indian and how the West Indian is not fully admitted into the Western civilization, but yet still they have the opportunity to develop it. There is something, and earlier with video, we heard about the black man or the African, and how the African gave the world civilization. A lot of math, a lot of religious practices today stems from African traditions, African culture, which has been either stolen or in some way been incorporated into the world. There's something about the indomitability of the African spirit that has helped to create the civilization of the world today. But he said, we're not fully admitted into the world, but they have the opportunity to develop it. The West Indian, the same West Indian who is part of an African heritage that has given civilization to the world. That is part of the African DNA that has not left him. So although the African has been disrupted and now part of the new Western civilization, he continues to contribute to the development of the Western civilization, where he now finds himself. But yet, he still finds himself in a position stemming from colonization where they are trying to wipe out your history or to denigrate or degrade your history to nothing else and nothing more than slavery. Quite interesting, quite powerful. But he's going to make a very important point.
The West Indians have done so well. And I would like to add this, that Fidel Castro and the Cubans are not all black people. Fidel isn't black at all. But the attitude of the revolution and what they are doing is essentially a West Indian revolution, similar to what Toussaint Louverture did.
Yes, so we come, in fact, you have an appendix to your book, an epilogue. You wrote the...
Quite powerful. He says just now, C.L.R. James, who wrote The Black Jacobins, who is from Trinidad, but writing about the revolution in Haiti. He says that he talks about some influential figures in the Caribbean that you should know. And the Negritude movement. He talks about George Padmore. Yes? And Malcolm X's mother, who is from the West Indies. I think she's Jamaican. Yes? Quite interesting, quite powerful. And he talks about the connections that these peoples and countries have in terms of, in the revolution, fighting for independence and for freedom. And he talks about Fidel Castro. And Fidel Castro wasn't black, but he was West Indian because we were all fighting for the same thing. Quite powerful.
Book in 1938, how remarkably prescient and prophetic Professor James' book is. because he dealt with the nature of Africa and the possible independence movements back then. But the epilogue is from Toussaint Louverture to Castro. Now, Toussaint Louverture, and it's imperative, of course, that white people know this. More blacks do, or we know that younger blacks are aware of this. I had difficulty finding this book, by the way, in white bookstores. I found it at the Ellis Bookshop on South Cottage, which is significant in itself, I think.
I think the book now is being sold and read everywhere. Yes. I think the movement on the whole, it is being read and studied in universities predominantly white in the United States. That is a fact. Although it's the black movement that has given it the great impetus.
Perhaps we should dwell upon the nature of this book, and it's a terribly important one. It's the Black Jacobins, the subtitle, Toussaint Louverture and the San Domingo Revolution. Now, here you describe a scene. The Spaniards came, the French, the British. They found a great deal of profit to be made in the West Indies, San Domingo, and Haiti. And
it was the wealthiest colony in the world at the time, not only in the West Indies.
And so, but it could only be done. You describe, of course, the slave trade and the nature of the slave ships and the incredible brutishness. So the question is, how could a people, the black people in this case, the Africans, and this, I'll ask you about the mulattoes in a moment, the Creoles, how could they survive is the question. This is the key.
The question is this. Number one, they were a people, obviously, who had basically a very fine physique. Otherwise, they would have been wiped away by the sheer objective circumstances of the Middle Passage and their lives.
Okay, make a note of this. Make a note of this. If you're not writing, write this. This is going to be in the exam. He talks, C.L.R. James writes about the African. And the African coming to Haiti. And by the way, I may ask you, do you consider C.L.R. James writing? Do you consider C.L.R. James' ideas here to be Afrocentric? Or are they still Eurocentric, but promoting Pan-African and it's still part of the idea and the ideology of Afrocentrism? But he talks about the African. The African that find themselves in the Caribbean, particularly those in Hispaniola or within the Caribbean. And this is very important. This is an African man, a West Indian man, writing about the history, of the African, the history of the West Indian. Not from the perspective of the white man, but from the perspective of the black man. But yet still, his perspective, although champion the ideals of the Pan-African ideals of a consciously aware and independent African and black man, he still has some European ideals, but he's onto something here. He says he defines the black man, the African. How does he do so? Listen.
They had a fine physique, and secondly, which is the most important, they were a people, obviously, who had basically a very fine physique. Otherwise, they would have been wiped away by the sheer objective circumstances of the Middle Passage and their lives.
The people, the West Indian people who came here from Africa, he says of them that they were people who were what? What were they? They were of what?
Fine physique.
Fine physique. Why does he say that? What philosophical basis or argument does he provide? Anybody?
They had a fine physique, and secondly, in the way that they were.
Oops, did I go all the way?
Movement that has given it the great impetus.
Perhaps Perhaps we should dwell upon the nature of this book, and it's a terribly important one. It's the Black Jacobins, the subtitle Toussaint Louverture and the San Domingo Revolution.
Did I go? I went.
Fidel isn't black at all. But the attitude of the revolution and what they are doing is essentially a West Indian revolution, similar to what Toussaint Louverture did.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you this in the exam. Okay. What it is that characterize, or what is this? How does C.L.R. James compare Cuba's revolution with the other with the Pan-African revolution for freedom? And he says that here, powerful.
So we come, in fact, you have an appendix to your book, an epilogue. You wrote the book in 1938. How remarkably prescient and prophetic Professor James' book is, because he dealt with the nature of Africa and the possible independence movements back then. But the epilogue is from Toussaint Louverture to Castro. Now, Toussaint Louverture, and it's imperative, of course, that white people know this. More blacks do, well, we know that younger blacks are aware of this. I had difficulty finding this book, by the way, in white bookstores. I found it at the Ellis Bookshop on South Cottage, which is significant in itself, I think.
I think the book now is being sold and read everywhere. Yes. I think the movement on the whole, it is being read and studied in universities predominantly white in the United States. That is a fact. Although it's the black movement that has given it the great impetus.
Perhaps we should dwell upon the nature of this book, and it's a terribly important one. It's the Black Jacobins, the subtitle Toussaint Louverture and the San Domingo Revolution. Now, here you describe a scene. The Spaniards came, the French, the British. They found a great deal of profit to be made in the West Indies, San Domingo, and Haiti. And
it was the wealthiest colony in the world at the time, not only in the West Indies.
And so, but it could only be done. You describe, of course, the slave trade and the nature of the slave ships and the incredible brutishness. So the question is, how could a people, the black people in this case, the Africans, and this, well, I'll ask you about the mulattoes in a moment, the Creoles, how could they survive is the question. This is the key.
The question is this. Number one, they were a people, obviously, who had basically a very fine physique. Otherwise, they would have been wiped away by the sheer objective circumstances of the Middle Passage and their lives.
Hispaniola was one of the wealthiest colonies, not just in the West Indies, but in the Caribbean, in the world. Wherever they were the colony, Hispaniola was wealthy. The commentator asked, well, I mean, yeah, we know it was wealthy because of the slave trade, the brutishness of stuff, and the question is, how were they able to survive? It's not only were they, why, the question is, yes, why were they able to survive the transatlantic and so on, and slavery, but not only that, why was Hispaniola considered one of the wealthiest, or the West Indies was so vital a trading port in the Caribbean, amongst the Europeans? And part of the answer he's giving here is about some of the characteristics of the African, which has always defined the African. They were of fine physique. If you read another book, oh my God, I did an assessment on this book the other day. Not Price for a Pound of Flesh. What's the name of that book? God Save the Child. Toni Morrison wrote this book. And in God Save the Child, she, in the book, she writes stories, and the little black girl talks about her skin as being blue magic, blue sky, and she used the word blue, and then her light skin master hit her in the face and the hit in the face was because the master was envious of her blue, of her skin that she described as magical. Blue black skin, this magical, and the envy of this light skin or this white person was the envy because the black person had skin that she just could not attain, no matter what she does. quite interesting, talking about how we are reimagining the African, reimagining this people, looking moving from a position of moving from a victim approach to a hero approach. But I'm gonna ask Christinia to say something, because you have one more thing he said. Listen to what he said.
They have a fine physique, and secondly, which is a most important point, they obviously were a highly civilized people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to be integrated into the sugar production in the way that they were, and learn as rapidly as they did the language and all the techniques of Western civilization.
They were people of high physique, one, and two, they were what? Anybody?
Intelligent.
Oh my God, you should try with that, yo. What do you mean about him? Him say more than that.
Highly civilized.
Highly. Okay? If you study Greek, they talked about adverbial modifiers. He says highly skilled. That is why they were chosen to come to the Caribbean to do what they had to do, and it's because Africa had people who were highly skilled. Yet they tried to wipe out any memory of their civility, dignity, religiosity, sophistication, creativity. They tried to hide it and get rid of it. They tried to get rid of critical thinking in schools now. The history that we are learning about today about Africa, that is because we are investing in learning that goes back to history, that revisit history, to learn about history that has been wiped out or disrupted, to promote a particular narrative, to preserve position, privilege, and status in the world. Hispaniola was one of the wealthiest. The Caribbean, the West Indies was among the wealthiest colony in the world. And they quickly learned the techniques of sugar and plantation production. Quickly.
They were civilized people in Africa, and today people are more and more recognizing that even when they were slaves in Africa, they were slaves of a certain organized society.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Let me let that sink. People would argue, there was always slave in Africa. African had slaves. But not the kind of the slaves weren't treated the way slaves were treated by the Europeans, treating them as property and livestock, and the brutishness of the transatlantic. And when we talk about the transatlantic, you know what we're talking about, yes? Part of the triangular slave trade, the transatlantic, which started with slavery in the 1600s. Or the 1500s. And just like they were starting slavery, they were also creating the theory of racism, or the theory of biological races, because there was no such thing as races in the world. But anyways, then I asked the question, based on what you're hearing from C.L.R. James right now, was he Afrocentric? Based on what you understand about the Afrocentric paradigm, do you believe that C.L.R. James is Afrocentric? Now, there are those who believe that he was not Afrocentric. There are people because they don't believe that Africa was his center. He still relied on European tropes and ideas. But I believe he was speaking for Africa as the center, because here is he talking about Africa, the Africans coming to the Caribbean. He says that, and one thing he says is that you think that when the Africans who came, they were people who were uncivilized. In this interview that C.L.R. James gave, okay, in the 1970s, the year that I was born, this interview, he was clearly Afrocentric because he clearly understood that Africa was and its people were civilized, intelligent, people of fine physique, okay, people who were powerful, bright, smart, okay. There was an organized society in Africa. Okay, those are the people that came here. Okay, that is why West Indian are so indomitable. That is why black and people are so powerful, and because the best of the best came to the Caribbean and to the New World because of the project that was being undertaken. Okay, quite interesting that the idea, but according to him, he said the people that came, they were civilized people. They weren't brutes. They weren't people who were primitive. That is why Hispaniola and the West Indies became so wealthy and became the leading trade, one of the leading colonies in the Caribbean, amongst the leading colonies in the European. It was just a successful project. And when you do philosophy, that's the way you ask questions. You ask the way. If these people are so primitive, why? If these people are so, this is quite interesting. Christinia, you had a question.
No, sir, he answered the question because I was thinking when you talk about fine physique, I was wondering it was just their body, but then literally it's found that no, I totally get it across the concept. So yes, I do believe this opposite.
All right, that's good. That's good. That's good. Sorry, I'm still here. So let's pick up with this.
That is what must be remembered about the West Indian. And he was more fortunate than he was in the United States because the islands were small, immensely concentrated. The sugar plantation had many of them living together, so they were closely connected. And this backbone of civilization in Africa and African physical strength, and then having to learn the elements of Western civilization made them what they did and what they have become.
So we come to several points that Dr. James raises, and again, the question of submerged history or suppressed history, that there was a highly developed, and Basil Davidson, among others, points this out.
Basil Davidson is doing a lot of that work, and that work is very important, and I'm very glad that Basil Davidson is doing it, because I have to say there is a tendency to criticism, sharp criticism of people who are whites because they are white, and Basil Davidson is a white man who would be an adornment to any black university.
But in his books, whether it be The Lost Cities of Africa, others, he speaks, and indeed many anthropologists now are discovering it, there was a highly developed civilization before the slave ships came.
Yes, not only that, the man who I know has carried that to the highest point is Professor George Roig. He used to be at Rochester, and he's now professor of sociology at Washington University in St. Louis. And he's doing some work on that subject, which is the very finest and most developed that I know. I myself am writing something, and most of my work is based not only on previous knowledge, but on what he and I have worked out together.
Before I ask you further about the book, we go into the book, we should point out to the audience that Professor James is a historic figure. I hope you don't mind my saying this. Not if you've seen. Professor James was an acquaintance of Nkrumah. He had met him when you discovered him, when he was going to the University of Pennsylvania. He was a friend of Dr. Du Bois. Was a friend of George Padmore, a remarkable figure, too little known to
close ally of George Padmore. I used to know Marcus Garvey too.
You knew Marcus Garvey?
Marcus Garvey came to Trinidad sometime about 1928. He had already been sent away from the United States, and I was a reporter, and I went and interviewed him and followed him around where he spoke. He was a tremendous man.
You probably are one of the few living people, I would guess, who knew Marcus Garvey personally.
Yes, I knew Marcus Garvey. I interviewed him somewhere about 1928.
Perhaps this is worth dwelling on. The role of Marcus Garvey. Here's a man who's been ridiculed to a great extent, and yet he made people aware, do you not, this West Indian?
I believe the intellectual origin of the black movement must rest with Dr. Du Bois. a man with a range of scholarship, practical activity, and ambition for the development of humanity, which is not exceeded by anybody in the 20th century. But his chief concern was to appeal to and get in contact with intellectuals, historians, organizers, etc. When Du Bois was finished, Garvey began, so to speak, and Garvey made black emancipation something popular, which it had never been before. So both of them, although they may have had conflict, they filled political roles. Du Bois made it an intellectual discussion, posed the question. Garvey made it a popular question. When Garvey was finished, everybody knew there was a black question. Both white people knew and black people all over the world knew. And that is what Garvey did, despite the mistakes that he made. That is to his great credit.
And Garvey's name was known throughout the black world. In Africa, too, they knew of Marcus Garvey.
And also throughout the white world. Garvey had made everybody, black and white, understand that the black man was sleeping no longer. He was on his way. That is his great contribution.
Here again, a West Indian. And so we return to this moment that with which your book begins. Here was a colony profitable to the colonist, to the absentee.
I'm going to stop there. I disagree with C.L.R. James. I agree. Well, I mean, in a sense, he's right that W.E.B. Du Bois made it an intellectual problem, or he developed the idea of, some people believe that he developed the idea of Afrocentricity or Afrocentricity, not Afrocentric, but they believe he contributed to that idea. Or the first person that was successfully able to utilize sociology to the black problem. Made it into a social and moved away from a kind of anthropology of assumption, but yet still he was at odds with Marcus Garvey, and I will talk about the odds with him and Marcus Garvey probably next week. And when I'm going to ask you who is Afrocentric as against who is not Afrocentric, and there is still today the odds or the argument between who is Afrocentric and who is not. Marcus Garvey versus Garveyites versus Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois. I myself am a graduate of the great Ivy League University of Penn, and Du Bois went to University of Penn, and there's a great intellectual divide because many people in the black world, in the intellectual world who were black, thought that in order it is only through education, it's only through academia and intellectualism that the black man's plight will be solved, because it's only through intellectualism or intellect or through education, academia, that you will find a change of consciousness. Du Bois was among, he studied the classics and Greek and so on, while Booker T. Robinson and Marcus Garvey did not. George Padmore as well studied, had a certain education, collegiate education. W.E.B. Du Bois had Ivy League education. I had an Ivy League education, and many people think, and they created universities. I myself am a part of a black university fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, and then of course W.E.B. Du Bois, he's a Kappa or Alpha, one of them, and in order to be part, and these universities, these black fraternities promote scholarship, brotherhood, and service, but yet still you have to have a GPA of 3.5 or 3.2 in order to get in there, and then they develop a kind of elitism and nepotism that creeps in its way, but W.E.B. Du Bois wasn't as successful as Marcus Garvey, and I believe many people believe that there was a bit of jealousy, because here is this guy from Jamaica, here in the US, and then he is not educated. He did go to the best schools, probably had 9th grade education, but very brilliant, very smart, because that's the blackness in him. He never had to expose himself to white education that was not Afrocentric like that of W.E.B. Du Bois. Okay, but there was a difference in philosophy. Marcus Garvey does not believe in a Africa for African, but he popularized the movement. He made it very popular, and they had so many people believe that W.E.B. Du Bois was responsible for the deportation of Marcus Garvey. Okay, although they're supposed to be working for the same thing. That's why many s- poor people's movements fail, okay, because of infighting and jealousy and so on. And many countries are set up like that to perpetuate the failure and the instability of African organizations or so on, so that those who always carry the gravel can continue to carry it at our expense. But this is very important what he said here.
The landlords, the powers, people being used, West Indian. And so
he talks about Barry Davidson and other white people who are now in the 70s who were conducting studies about Africa. And he was doing some of the studies with them. But I mean, I don't know what anthropology, but they were using their European ways to study Africa. So in the 1970s and 80s, they were still backward. They weren't there, but yet still there was a recognition that Africa was civilized. And you hear him saying that in this interview. But yet you notice that they couldn't find this book in the 70s and the 80s. The 60s, they couldn't find Frantz Fanon book. They probably can't even find my book in Jamaica and the Caribbean either because of what we write about. Go ahead, Julian.
Sir, I'm listening and I'm looking at the divisiveness at that level of leadership among the Blacks. And it's clear that that continues to be one of our biggest downfalls as a race. I mean, it was divisiveness that caused brothers to sell each other into slavery in Africa. And it's the same divisiveness that prevails among the Black leaders. And it's kind of disappointing. We really have to deal with that.
Some people don't even think that Africans were considered themselves brothers. They thought of themselves as just people, not a race. Because remember, race only came about in the 1500s. So when the Europeans came, when the idea of them selling out their brothers, that might be a stretch. That might be a European thinking to continue to put us against each other. Because at the same, there are those who believe that Black people were the Africans in Africa, they would consider themselves as peoples, and they were just as highly competitive as the Europeans were. Okay, so but yeah, so that's one way of thinking. But you're right though. They were still brothers, they were still people, but they weren't as organized as the Europeans were. The Europeans brought a proposal to them, and the proposal that they sold that proposal to all of the African nations, okay, within African civilization. Go ahead. And they didn't know that the deal that they made with Nigeria was the same deal that they made with Benin, that the same deal that they made with Ivory Coast is the same deal that they made, because all these peoples wanted to control, to be the dominant African nation. Just as in Europe, they were racing to be who would be the best. Okay, but then, I asked the question: how were these Africans? How did they allow themselves to be overrun and overtaken and to have their history? How we have to know. I have an answer for that. I won't give it to you now. I'll give it to you at later class. I'm going to share an article that I wrote. But one of the things and I actually did a podcast and a show talking about this, reflections in Africology. If you read ahead and listen to these things, I talk about this. I said, because of the characteristics of the African. Okay. Edward Blyden talks about the characteristics of the races. And for him, the white race was the devil race. For him, the white race was the race that was competitive, but the Black race was not that kind of race. They were friendly with everyone, and they thought that everybody had what they had too, and they were sharing. But because of their thinking and their spirit and their openness and the drive, their culture, the cultures, and we're going to talk about that in the next class when we start looking at the characteristics of the African. Okay, based on we look at what Edward Blyden said, because I've oftentimes asked my professor, if the Africans were so powerful, if they had civilization, they were smart, intelligent, how could they allow these white people to outsmart them? Remember, they were bucolic. One thing you learn about them, they were bucolic. They were communal. We talked about that if you read the Afrocentric Paradigm, but we'll talk about the next week class when we start. I will give my presentation about the Afrocentric Paradigm and share several things about Diop and Ashanti and African civilization. I wrap it up. Okay, but I'm going to share some insights. They were bucolic people. They were people who were embracing, loving, religious. They weren't. They were a different set of people. And so they were They were taken over. That's one perspective. Okay, that's one perspective. But I want to share with you Edward Blyden's paper. It's powerful. I read a paper on Edward Blyden, which I believe is the most powerful paper I've read, although I found the paper to have was riddled with errors. I still read it, and it's a historical paper piece written in the 1800s. And I'm going to share it with you if I have a time to next week. There's so much I want to do. But here is a missionary, an African missionary, went from the New World to Africa under the auspices of the church, who was to me was the first missionary to missions. The first missionary to missionaries. Okay, because I'm going to say why. And he talks about the races but he has a problem with the mixing of the races. We talk about that. Okay, but let's wrap this up.
Return to this moment with which your book begins. Here was a colony profitable to the colonist, to the absentee landlords, the powers, people being used, abused, yet surviving. Now, something happened in France. Now, in 1789 was a French Revolution. Therefore, it had a certain impact. How did word come to San Domingo?
For one reason, people used to go up and down, but the French whites discussed the doctrines of the French Revolution with the utmost freedom. And there were white people from France who asked them, aren't you worried a bit that you should discuss these things before these black people? But they paid no attention to the blacks. They looked upon them as some sort of animal. A white woman used to undress before the black slaves as if they were a horse or a dog. They looked upon them as nothing, and they discussed these things very freely. And people from France asked them, but aren't you never talking? They didn't bother, but the blacks were listening.
What is interesting about this, what makes Professor James' book so contemporary is this very point you just made. Often there is a...
This is quite powerful, the Black Jacobins. You guys, I'm gonna stop here, and I'm gonna end class early. And then because I'm going to end the lecture here because I want to go over some important things, administrative things with you guys in terms of what you need to look out for next. But hopefully we get a chance to, what time is it? Let me see what time it is now. What time is it, guys? What time is it? 5:35. Okay, and you didn't even get a break. I'm sorry about that. So we're going to end class early, but this is powerful. This is available. This video is available. We'll probably continue to. Maybe what I'll do is I'll probably share it next week when we come in. But because this is a good precursor to the class, a good video to watch, good book to read. Here is a Caribbean as well, from a Caribbean perspective, talking about the Haitian Revolution. But I love how he starts. He doesn't start it by just talking about history in a very linear, straight line form. It starts with Christopher Columbus coming to Hispaniola and talking about the indomitability of the African people. Okay. Here is he talking about the Haitian Revolution and talking about how it started, but he starts from the French Revolution and how word got to the Haitians. Because the white people were having conversation in front of black people, Africans, thinking that they were animals and weren't intelligent, but they were. This is interesting. That's the strategy of the African, using the judo technique in philosophy or in argumentation, the judo technique. Pretend as if you are dumb. Pretend as if you don't know. Say, for example, I'll be in cars or in here in the US, I'll be in certain places and people broke out talking in patois, and they think that I'm an American, and they're having the deepest conversation in patois, the most secrets of conversations, because they think that I'm not Jamaican and I can't speak patois. Okay, and the next thing you know, I say something to them in Jamaican. So wait, oh my God, you're Jamaican, you understand what I'm saying? And I said so much. That is the idea that's what the African did as well. Not only that, the white people in their superiority, and Frantz Fanon in his black skins white mask talks about this, talked about the problem, how the white in the Negro is not any more than the white man. He says in Frantz Fanon says the Negro is not any more than the white man. So for him, the Negro is strapped. The Negro is strapped in his the Negro is strapped in his blackness. The African is trapped in his inferiority, while the white man is trapped in his superiority. He talks about that. We're going to talk about that as the course progresses. And here it is that C.L.R. James is talking about how, but he's challenging that, because he's here saying he's using this false notion of the inferiority of the black man, okay, to learn ideas and strategies that will ultimately come to overtake and hurt the white man. Because here it is that it is from these conversations that went all the way back to Haiti that also, they said, helped to influence the French Revolution. When they learned of the French Revolution, it got wind in the colonies. They did not want the colonies to know what was going on in France. But they found out, because they were having conversations in front of these Africans who were in France, thinking that, oh, they're dumb. They're animals. They don't know anything. They're not intelligent. They don't know our language. But Africans, remember, they learn quickly. They learn quickly. Okay, this is deep. Then when we start talk about religion now, we'll get there, guys. We'll get there. We'll talk about African traditions and African spirituality as against European spirituality and some of the spirituality that we haven't adopted. Well, we're gonna get there slowly. We'll get there. All right. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop here. By the way, this is part of Caribbean and Pan-African Thought on the YouTube channel. I think I've shared it. I've shared this. Did I share this video in the JTS online? I may not. I may have. I'm not sure. I will do that later on today. But this is quite powerful, quite interesting. Let me. Where am I? Let me stop sharing my screen. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Go to JTS and tell you what you're going to do next week. All right. I'm going to review. I'm going to review all the Afrocentric Paradigm presentations that you have given, and comment on them individually. So you can look out for that. For next week class, we are going to do the lecture. We're going to look at a lecture. We're going to continue with what is the Caribbean and who determines this. Looking at we're going to be looking at. We're going to wrap up. We're going to wrap up the Afrocentric Paradigm. I'm going to share some insights from her paper. I am going to share a presentation. Some insights from a paper that I wrote in regards to this. And then I'm going to talk about the inaccuracies of Afrocentrism and the 7 basic African cultural characteristics of Karenga.
Sir?
When we finish with that, we're gonna ask. When we're finished with that for next week. Oh, there we go. We have the C.L.R. James interview. That's what we should do. We will pick up with.
Sir,
Yeah, go ahead.
excuse me. Remember, you told them that they're supposed to read the preface of your book and also chapter one for week fifth class, which is next week.
All right. So I have updated that.
Okay.
I've updated that. So what I want them to do next week is you go to coursework and assignments. Reflection paper one is done. By the way, there is some next week. You can read this, but I'll share this with you next week. How to write reflection papers. I always do this with my students. I wrote this and I decided to make a presentation to share it with you guys to aid in your writing. How to write reflection papers. I'll share that with you later on. Next week. Midterm assignment due March 14. It's there. You can do it whenever you so it's all there. Midterm assignment that's due. All of these questions are actually answered if already somewhere. Okay. I'm just giving you a little bone. Okay. Wishbone. All of these questions have already been answered somewhere. So don't make it hard for yourself. You just need to find where. Could it be one of the past Caribbean Thought lecture classes that's available in video form on YouTube? Could it be on one of the lecture notes that's available on JTS Online with all the lectures? Probably, but it's there. Group one, the first assignment. I think I have a due date for this. If you click on it, what's the due date for this? Due date, Wednesday, the 30th of April, 2025 at 12 a.m. All right, Wednesday, the 30th of April, this is due. But how are you guys gonna do it? You guys will be expected to complete this and then present it in class together as a group. You guys will present in class. There is a exploring islands of the Caribbean. So the next group work, the next group assignment is due in April. All right, where you guys are supposed to, in your groups, identify. And this is what I would like Chantel to help to moderate this. Each group is supposed to do a Caribbean island that you guys cannot you guys cannot do the same groups, the same island. No two group can be doing the same island. Okay, so you guys have to submit your paper as quickly as possible. So if group one says I want to do Haiti before group two, then group one will do Haiti. Okay. So you guys are supposed to choose, and maybe we should have you guys draw a straw or something, but because some of you might but the plan is for each of you in your groups, for each group to complete this group presentation, this group assignment entitled Exploring Islands of the Caribbean, where you identify 2 islands to research and to present on. You will need to provide the following information using Caribbean material. What is the socio-political economy of Haiti or Jamaica or Trinidad or Martinique? Amamazama is from Martinique. Frantz Fanon is from Martinique. What are the main religions? What is the religious breakdown? What are the demographics and the racial demographics? I should say. What are the demographics and the racial makeup? Sorry, demographics and racial makeup of the country. Give me a synopsis of the history. Why are they who they are? What's their history? Current position in the world. And by current position, I mean current socioeconomic position in the world today. What are their notable figures? Say, for example, Amamazama. Say, for example, in Jamaica, Bob Marley, Louise Bennett, Rex Nettleford, by the way, it's Reggae Month. So the last class of this month, I will be talking about, I'll be sharing something from Bob Marley. Sorry, the film. I can't remember the film. There are 3 films. 2 of them we will watch in class. The last lecture, but that's the group assignment. There are more assignments, and I will let you know what they are. But for now, what I want you to do for next week? Oh, I would like you to read Neoliberalism Book 1 by Renaldo McKenzie, the preface and chapter 1. That's what I would like you to read for next week. Read Neoliberalism Book 1 by Renaldo McKenzie, the preface of chapter 1. The preface and chapter 1. Okay? That's for next week. I would like you to do that and reflect on that. Okay? So I do a reflection paper on Neoliberalism Book 1. Okay? The preface and chapter 1. So what are the main ideas in based on your understanding of by reading the preface? And then of course, what is the general motif for chapter 1? Okay. So next week by 12 o'clock, I would like you guys to submit a reflection paper of the preface and chapter 1 of Neoliberalism. Okay. And of course, by March 14, a midterm paper is due where you have to read that anyways. Okay, and answer all these questions. All right.
Wait, repeat that, sir.
For next week, you're supposed to read chapter 1 of Neoliberalism and also the preface and do a reflection paper. In the reflection paper, fine. You know what? In the reflection paper, talk about the general idea. What is the thesis? What is he contending for in the book? What is his framework or philosophical principles that he's using? So that's what I would like you guys to when you do your reflection. But hold on, okay. Course outline: how to write reflection papers. Oops. Stop share. Share. This is a one-page interaction paper, which aims to reflect on the weekly material covered in a course, utilizing APA style and double or whatever style, utilizing APA, MLA, or Turabian style, and double spacing each week. Students are required to include at least one source, unless instructed otherwise by the lecturer. The primary objective of the assignment is to encourage critical thinking and engagement with the course material, fostering a deeper understanding of the subject matter. Through reflection, students can explore questions, concerns, and personal insights gained from the material, contributing to an active learning process. Now, the interaction paper serves as a platform for students to engage with the course material on a weekly basis. By providing an opportunity for reflection, students can delve into their thoughts, questions, and concerns regarding the content covered following APA-style guidelines. This paper adheres to double spacing and incorporates at least one source per week, unless otherwise specified by the lecturer. And of course, let me say this again, it's a reflective approach which aims to facilitate deeper understanding and integration of the course material. Then the body. Weekly material overview. Provide a brief summary of the key concepts, theories, or ideas covered during the week, or on the reflection material. This section serves as a foundation for the subsequent reflection. Personal reflection. In this section, discuss your thoughts and reactions to the weekly material. Did it challenge any preconceived notions? Did it align with your prior knowledge? Elaborate on specific ideas or examples that stood out to you and explain why they were significant. Questions and concerns. Address any questions or concerns that arose from the material. What aspects were unclear or in need of further clarification? Express the concern. Expressing the concerns helps to deepen your understanding and encourages class discussions or further research and application and relevance. Reflect on the practical application and relevance of the weekly material. How does it relate to real world scenarios or personal experiences? Consider how the concepts covered might be applicable in different contexts or how they align with current issues. Conclusion. The interaction paper provides an avenue for students to actively engage with the course material through reflection. By incorporating APA style and adhering to double spacing, the paper follows standard academic formatting each week. Students are expected to include at least one source unless otherwise instructed by the lecturer. The paper structure encompasses an overview of the weekly material, personal reflections, questions and concerns, and considerations of practical application. Through this process, students can enhance their comprehension, critical thinking skills, and contribute to a more interactive learning experience. Next week, class, if I have time, I don't know if I'll have time, we will talk about critical thinking. I have a lecture on critical thinking after we have completed talking about Afrocentric paradigm and so on. Sometimes I will ask you to do a reflection on the class. When the class has ended, I'm going to say, you're not going to do anything, just do a reflection on the class. I may ask you to write a reflection paper on the reading. I'm asking you to write a reflection paper this week on the reading, because next week when we are finished, because we are still contending, what is the Caribbean? Where do we begin? And this is groundbreaking for you guys. And I'm telling you this. Nowhere else are they doing this in the way that we are doing it. This is groundbreaking for JTS. And you are doing it this way because you have a professor who is exposed to some of these groundbreaking learning modules and insights, and I'm sharing it with you. Say, for example, they're not talking about the Afrocentric paradigm and Afrocentricity in the way we are talking about it in the classes. They are not beginning with a position of victory. They are beginning with a position of oppression. Okay, so this is good for me and for you, so that we can learn from our mistakes as we start to think about the Caribbean and all these investments from China and what that means for Jamaica. Go ahead, Chantal. Go ahead. Chantal? Chantal, can you hear me? Are you guys hearing? Is something happening? Is there something going on with the sound?
We are hearing you, sir.
Oh, I see Chantal hand up, but is it an error? Maybe it's an error. Is that an error, Chantal? Okay. There's one thing I want to share with you. When we talk about reflection, I may ask you to. That's fine. You can come in. I want to share an idea, a very important concept with you.
Sir?
Yes, go ahead.
Chantel said that she's speaking in the chat, sir. But I don't know if it's her mic not on.
Oh, what is she saying? What is she saying?
It seems like she said she don't know what is happening. It looks like maybe she's having technical difficulties, sir. She said the assignment a group work. She's asking us.
Oh, I did promise you to do that. You guys want to do the reflection
She's
paper?
asking if the one for next week, sir, if it is a group work.
I mean, nah, I don't think. I mean, it's just a basic reading and submit the work. Once you submit it, you'll be marked. You get your full marks. Okay, it's part of participation. That's how I use. That's my way of do the participate. That's my way of tracking participation in the course. Okay. So once you complete it, you get full marks. What you need to, but still, you still have to double space and at least and include a reference. You know, because I'm trying to have ensure that you guys are developing that in your acumen. I want to share some, and I want to share something with you guys. I've been trying to tell. I want you guys to start writing letters to the Gleaner and so on. And tell you guys, I don't ask you guys to do anything that I don't do. That's how I am. That's how I've always been. This is the Jamaica Gleaner. Oh my God. Participants can see your screen. I know that. I want them to see my screen. And this is not what I told them that I wanted to. What's going on? Jamaica Gleaner. Jamaica. Oh, here we go. Then, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Good.
It's gone.
All right, great. Are you seeing this? All right, so I went
Yes, sir.
Google, type Renaldo McKenzie's letter to the editor, Jamaica Gleaner, and it shows all my letters to the editor come. I write a lot to the Gleaner. They publish my stuff a lot. So I wrote the one-sided reality of workplace reality, but that's where my writing began in 1999. Okay. In the Jamaica Gleaner, writing letters, and they were always being published in Letter of the Day while I was at JTS. The professor of this course, the previous professor, David Pearson, one of my best professors at JTS, who taught me, David Pearson, he was saying, he would always say, I can't wait to see your writing. Oh my God, you write so well. And he would say, if you submit to the Gleaner, if any of my students submit to the Gleaner and it's published, you get an extra credit. And I'm like, what? I want those credits. I want every point I can. And that helped to develop my writing and encourage me. So I hope, and I hope that you guys continue to write. So if you see that I wrote several articles, the one-sided reality of workplace loyalty, reform birthright citizenship to protect against misuse. I believe in what Donald Trump is doing. I believe that birthright citizenship should be reformed. Why do I say that? Okay. Look at how I interact with the subject matter. Look at how look what's happening in the day and how I relate to it and how I address it. That's why I'm bringing this up. Okay, I want you guys to see how, as academics, how we comment and how we interact using academic lens to the issues of the day. Okay. Now, when you come down this one, we're going to talk about this later on, maybe next week. Have we misunderstood our history? That's important. Now, we definitely go through this in this next week after next, or this or next week. And then there's one part where I talk about Kamala Harris's racial identity is a controversial debate. And I had a discussion with the previous class just before the election, and it was published. It was beautiful. They talked about Kamala Harris, and many of them said, oh, she's not Jamaican. I mean, she's not African American, but she's of Jamaican heritage. But her mom is Indian. Her father is Jamaican, of Jamaican heritage. But he's not black in the sense because he doesn't identify as black. He identifies as Indian, Irish, but not the African side. Okay. So is she really black? Is she African? I don't know. And of course, have we misunderstood our history? I talk about that, and we're going to talk about this next week. I'm writing to the editor, Sir Madame, and it's also part of my next of the book that of the journal that we're about to publish, the Caribbean Thought Journal. I'm writing to explore Jamaica's identity and heritage, especially in relation to the Taino people, who were the original inhabitants of our land, while acknowledging the presence of East Indians and Chinese who arrived during the era of the indentured labor in about the 1850s, after the abolition of slavery in 1865. Actually, I'm telling you, it's actually 1833. After 1833, that was okay. After 1833, just about 1850s is when they start to come, not after 1865. Okay, but there's a point I'm making here. While acknowledging the presence of other peoples like the Indians and the Chinese, the majority of the population, comprising individuals with black or brown skin, is believed to have African ancestry following the eradication of the Arawak Indians by the Spanish. This sets Jamaica apart from other Spanish-occupied West Indian islands like Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Belize, and Suriname, which retained a small native Indian population despite the Spanish invasion. All right. So there's an article about this in the Gleaner that I wrote. We're going to talk about this in the next over the next upcoming classes, the next two classes. Once we wrap up Afrocentric paradigm and Afrocentrism and so on, and then it gives us a segue into talking about how we then misunderstood our history, because we've been talking about colonization and so on, and tribe and primitive, and whether or not African people had family, whether or not they had religion, and now we're hearing that urban part of the Africans who were there. Okay, Africans actually came here and they intermingled with some of the natives, that the Taino people. So now the question is, have we misunderstood our history through and through? First, have we misunderstood it based on the bastardization and the corruption stemming from when the Europeans came and saw the civilization? They didn't want anything to do with the Africans who they were going to enslave, and they wiped out their history so that they can never claim back it. They can't claim it back, sorry. They can't go back and file a lawsuit and ask for anything, because there is no memory of it, because it has been wiped out. So now, as we seek to recreate and excavate and do critical thinking to find things out, they want to do away with it so that there can be no claim against their theft. Quite interesting, quite powerful. Okay. We're going to stop here. Guys. It's 6:04. So next week, read Neoliberalism. Read chapter 1 of Neoliberalism and the preface. But we're not, and then submit a reflection paper based on your reading. Do you guys want to do this in a group setting? You guys want to do this reflection as a group or individual?
No, individual.
Individual. All right, we'll do it individually. Okay, guys. And again, if you have any questions, concern, please reach out to me. Sometimes some people ask me a question, so you don't see the chat or you don't look at your WhatsApp. I'm so sorry. I do, but I never got a chance to introduce myself. Next week, I'll introduce myself. And you get to know some about who I am and what I do. I'm here in the US. I'm here in Portland. I also work in Korean as well. I'm very involved with a lot, and also work in public health management with the public health management corporation. So I do a lot here. So, and you guys work in case management. I also help to run a case management and social work program. Some of you might be thinking, I hope to. So I hear you guys talking about social work. I also am a guru in social work here in the US. And I'm very involved. I've run several social work programs for the US here. So I am very involved. I know what's going on in social work industry, but I'm also an ordained minister. When I went to JTS, I wanted to be dynamic. So I did I did social work, I did clinical psychology, and I did theology. And then once I came to the US, I mean, I was the deputy director for the Jamaica Values and Attitudes Project. I also
Sir,
ran the counseling program at NYS, and we have a relationship at JTS with NYS. So that's a little bit about me. Go ahead. Who is that? Chantel.
Oh, you can hear me now.
I can.
Okay, great. Good evening again.
Yeah.
In regards to the reflective paper, you said that you're going to teach us how to write a good reflective paper, but there is an outline that is on Moodle right now. Should we be using that outline as a prerequisite of what you're expecting a paper to look like, a reflective paper to look like?
Actually, it's a beautiful outline that you guys could follow it. Yes. You can even have abstract and introduction and then 1, 2, 3 conclusion. Yeah, you can do that in your reflection paper to develop your writing. Because that's your writing. All writing should have an abstract.
Okay.
To be
And
honest.
just to be on the same point, the reflective paper should be on um your book, the first page and the
Yes,
prefix,
yes,
correct?
yes, yes, yes. So I talk about interaction paper and reflection. So your reflection, I to actually write a reflection paper, but the interaction paper is like I am giving you the option of writing weekly interaction paper that interact with the course that interact. But if you're going to write a reflection paper, I don't need an interaction paper about the week. Okay, all right,
Yes, sir.
all right. I don't need an interaction paper like so. You don't have to. But if you're writing a reflection paper for neoliberalism and chapter 1 of neoliberalism, you could still use the same format of how you're supposed to. You're interacting with something. Interaction paper, reflection paper, same difference. You're interacting with the material, so you can still use the format. It doesn't have to be to the T, but at least what I expect is it has to be organized in an organized format in an organized way, um, following academic style. Okay. Okay, Chantal. But you know what?
Yes, sir.
But so far, what you have given me is good. Eventually, when I give you back your papers, I'm gonna give you back your reflection paper with some comments. So you'll get to. So that's another good thing about it. You know, when I read your papers, I make little comments, so that you guys can learn from them and so on. So that's another reason why I like to have you guys do reflection paper because I can see what you guys are doing and comment. Okay. So this week, no interaction paper, just a reflection paper. Okay, on book on neoliberalism, book 1. Sorry, neoliberalism, the preface and chapter 1, and you can still use the format I give you in terms of what are the considerations for writing an interaction paper. It doesn't have to be 4 pages, 5 pages, just 2 pages. And by the way, Nicholas, you are off to a great start. I love the way you started your interaction paper. A little bit he had okay, so that's he some of you already know how to write. So you guys don't already know how to write and so on. All right. So next week again, 2-page paper, interacting with the book Neoliberalism. You are going to enjoy the book. You're going to enjoy the preface. I think the preface is the best part of the book.
Sir, any
Yeah.
headway on the donation for the group?
Donation? What
If
donation?
I remember correctly, and I'm hoping my memory serves me right, you are going to donate a book to the school so that we, the students, can get access to the book, sir.
I don't remember saying that. I think you misrepresented me a little bit. I might. What I did. What? Okay. Oh wait. I
Sir,
might.
that's what for the e-library.
I think they already have 1 or 2 there.
Yes, sir.
They already have 2 books there. And I gave
Yes,
one
sir.
to Mrs. Campbell, and that's her book. I guess she could borrow one from her. And we are sending some more books out to Jamaica. We're gonna put 1 or 2 more books to the library in the library. Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, the ebook. The ebook. We talked about the ebook and having it available because the book is also
Yes, sir.
online. I forgot about it. I forgot
That's
about it.
well. You're welcome, sir, for
So,
reminding me. I'm
okay, the
sure my
ebook.
fellow
Okay,
classmates
fine,
would
fine.
love to
Yes.
have
Okay, but my
access.
Chantel, you didn't remind me about the ebook thingy.
Sorry, sir. But that's a Chantal is there a class rep? So we
Oh, you're
spoke
right.
most of the
Chantal,
time.
okay, Chantal, remind me to follow up with the librarian about sending her a copy of the ebook, okay?
Sir, would you like me to remind you on Tuesday or Wednesday so that they can read ahead of the paper going in for
I
Thursday?
mean, they should still try and read it. As I said to you, they'll have access to the preface on Amazon. And they will
Sir,
have. Go ahead, Chantel.
sorry. The group 5 already choose their countries that they want to submit assignments on. So,
Okay, the first come first serve makes okay.
so
First come first serve. So that's good. That's good. All right.
Can my group get Jamaica?
so group 5 is Dominica and Turk and
And Turks
Caicos.
and Caicos.
Yeah, that's a group 5.
I'm Julian. I'm not sure. I don't
Somebody
remember my
want to do
group now, but
Jamaica?
I'm asking first to take Jamaica.
It's not that we didn't want to do Jamaica, sir, but we assume that other persons would want to choose it, so we chose a less likely country.
Okay,
But
Jamaica.
sir, you want to sell off Jamaica, sir? I just chose Jamaica. Why you want to sell me out, sir?
So Julian chose Jamaica for group 6.
Okay. Let me.
Thank you, Chantal.
Since we're on
You're
groups,
welcome.
okay. Let me see. Caribbean thought. Caribbean thought. Let me see. But if Jamaica is on the lecture, some of the like Haiti, I don't want anybody to do Haiti.
No, sir. Too controversial.
Because I'm already going to be doing a lecture on Haiti. Because Haiti
Okay.
needs needs a whole class to itself. Needs
Yes,
a lot.
sir. So
Okay.
true.
So I'm gonna do Haiti, but maybe I should do Jamaica as well.
So is it any country in the Caribbean?
Any country: Belize, Martinique, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Kitts and Nevis. There's Puerto Rico is in the Caribbean. Yeah, Puerto Rico is in the Caribbean. Dominican Republic. Yeah, Dominican Republic.
Quick question.
You know what?
Puerto Rico
You know
is
what?
still under the US rule, so is it safe to use that country?
I mean, it's part of the Caribbean, and we're the Caribbean thought. Yes, definitely.
So,
Yeah.
sir, are you saying we can't use Jamaica? Our group should not do Jamaica?
Jamaica. You can do Jamaica. Yeah, go ahead and do Jamaica. Yeah, somebody can do Jamaica. You guys can do Haiti too. But I will still talk about Haiti. Yeah, you can because you're gonna find a lot of information about Haiti. But I will. I know problem. Idris may want to do Haiti. So yeah, yes.
No, we'll do Jamaica.
So if you guys want, if Idris, if you want to do Haiti and Trinidad, since you live in Trinidad and you're from Haiti, you can do that.
No, I would like to do Haiti, but I'll just walk it with you.
All right. Yes. But
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. Okay. So there's Haiti, Dominican Republic, Belize, Guyana.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, to get it clear, is it that they should do on two islands or just one?
2 islands.
So Jamaica and which other one? Group 6.
2 islands? Oh,
Yes,
I didn't know.
ma'am, 2 islands.
Can somebody else from Group 6 choose another island to go with Jamaica? Barbados?
So Chantel,
yeah.
Quick question. We're
Go ahead.
supposed to be doing the history on both islands, their strong points, weak points, and all of that on both islands.
Yes.
Are we doing a
there is-
contrast to, or just the history of both islands?
History of both islands.
There's an outline of the assignment on Moodle, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It is on Moodle. Yes.
Okay.
There's a
thanks.
Barbados group 6.
Yeah, Barbados and Jamaica. Yes.
You know what?
Okay.
I'm going to tell you this. Yeah, there's an outline there, but you guys can take whatever. If you guys want to present the information by contrasting the two, you can do that. In fact, that's enough.
No, sir.
You
It's
know?
okay, sir.
So that's
It's okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Let's complicate. Oh, sorry, it's okay. We don't have to contrast. We'll just accuse.
That would be great. I mean, no, but it makes for an interesting presentation because you could say, Jamaica is a dependent capitalist country. Um, 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 that is
After the end, so like when
got
they talk about
independent,
the Eastern countries,
that predominantly
then
speak
the countries and the countries.
predominantly speak English, blah blah blah. As against Cuba, that's predominantly speak Spanish country, so on and so forth. Talk about they're not they took their independence or revolution while Jamaica got it ceremonially done. It's fine. It's so refreshing to talk about it like that.
But sir, I know your mind is very adventurous, sir. So the longer we talk about the assignment, the more layers are added. So I think we should go now, sir.
Okay, all right.
I
Yes.
second that motion, Miss
All right.
Barrett.
Humberta is laughing, yo. Okay, guys.
Sorry, good evening. Before we go, we are going to place the groups in our WhatsApp message or in the chat here now before.
The groups are up.
It can be done in WhatsApp as well. That's
The
fine.
countries.
Do it in WhatsApp. Then we have access to it all the time. We take up the phone. We refresh ourselves with what is what. I think it's
All right.
better. Yes.
Okay.
And you guys are all in a group, yes?
There's only
except for
one
Natalie.
person alone, sir, which is Natalie, right? So I'm gonna put her in group 5.
I used to be at JTS from 1999 to 2003. And let me tell you, man, the first day I walked into the class at JTS, it was a Caucasian gentleman. And he was teaching, it was Introduction to Missiology. Missiology. I'm like, the big one, the book was huge. The book was this big, was big. And I was like, I left that first week saying, I don't know if I can do this. I didn't know college was so much. Boy, that guy filled my head. I was like, wow, woo. I mean, it was a lot. But by the time I was finished, I was like, oh, okay. Everything just came to fruition. And but we were bombarded back in the days, man. It was a lot of intense academic rigor. Trust me. And some point you were left up to yourself. You have to do one whole heap of reading. And every week there's 2-3 assignments. I am telling you guys, it was a lot of work. You guys is having it much easier now. I'm telling you that, okay? But I'm trying to get back to that place but in my class, I will expose you and I will grill you. And when I'm done, your brain would have been expanded. Okay? I'm telling you that. And if you talk to anybody that was in the class, they will tell you the same thing. So I am happy that I'm teaching the course, or facilitating the course, and that you guys are members of this class. And I hope we have an amazing time. All right? And I interrupted you guys. Sorry about that. Chantel or Diana. Chantel? Diana?
Chantal, sir.
Chantel. I interrupted. You guys were talking. Did you guys finish putting you guys in groups and stuff?
Yes, sir. That's already done.
All right. Well, guys, I pray that God will keep you. I pray that God will strengthen you. We recognize that God is than that which nothing greater can be conceived or imagined, and that it is in God that we live, move, and have our being. And we understand that we are limited, but you are unlimited, and yet you use our limitations to make sense of the world. But help us never to act with puffed up knowledge without humility. But help us to be humble. And help us to have love. The more we know, help us to love even more and harder. Lord God, strengthen my students in this class. Open up their brains, their minds. When they are done with this course, I pray that they will be even stronger, smarter, greater. Help them to do great things moving on from this course every single one of them. When they're done, when we are done, help us to say that, oh, wow, what an amazing ride. I learned so much. Even me, Lord, even I pray that I would say that too, although I've taught this course over and over. I've written books and exposed myself. Help me to be humble and teach me more concepts. Help me to be a light to the world and for the students in this course. Grant them favor, because not favor to be puffed up, favor so that they can now shine that the glory of God can shine through them. The power of God, the beauty of God, the presence of God. We pray, God, that they will be the light. Give us tremendous love. Give us opportunities, even now. Whatever the students are going through in their personal lives, may you be there with them, strengthen them, surround them with your love and your beauty, even now, O God. Grant them financial blessings, spiritual blessings in their families. They may have children, cousins, loved ones who are battling demons. Even now, may you strengthen that one. May you keep them safe. People who are going through marital relationship issues, may you bless them and strengthen the relationship that they share. Give them the wisdom, the words to say. Sometimes they don't know what to say, the words to say. They feel impotent, oh God. Sometimes we close our minds to the answers. You give us the answer, it's right there. But because we are so myopic and parochial, we miss the blessing. May our minds not be closed, but may it be open to the move of the Spirit. We thank you for all that you are and all that you continue to do in us and through us. We pray that the students will come back next week with a powerful testimony of how God continued to bless them, not just financially, but spiritually, biologically, cognitively, academically. Make their lives be one that is enriched with tremendous blessing, so that they can empower others as they are empowered. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Sir.
Yes.
Julia and Jada Marie had said that they were unable to come to class today. So I should let you know.
Do you know why?
No, sir, they didn't tell me why.
Okay. They can't just say they can't just say I'm unable to come to class. That's like they can't just say that. After they can't come to class. But why can't they come to class? Is it an emergency that they're having? Is it something like that? Did they
Julia said unforeseen circumstances.
Oh, yeah, but we need to know what those unforeseen circumstances, because I can say that to my professor every week. Okay, and it's not unforeseen. We need to know what's going on. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir. I will look at it to them.
Group 3. Okay, Chantel, anybody that don't come to class moving forward have to do a reflection paper in addition to the assignment. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So if they did not come to the class today, they will watch the video and do a reflection.
Sir.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Sir.
I have a question, sir. So what if somebody is sick and they're not able to come to class, sir? People have
I was about to say that, or
their family or their child sick. Child, what if things are going with me, sir? We just forced to come today. What if these are one of the person's challenges? I don't think that would be fair to them, sir. I'm just
Hold up. No, guys, hold up.
Hold on.
I want you to listen to what you are saying.
Yeah.
I want you. No. Chantel said she got a call saying some students can't make it. We don't know. That's it. They just can't make it. I'm saying that those students, you can't just call to say you can't make it to class. We have to, if you are ill, then that's different. But if you just call to say you can't make it and you don't provide a reason, then I need a reflection paper. And I need to know ahead of time. Not at the end of class. 1, 2, you're sick today, but you're not sick 2 days after that. You can still benefit from the class by watching the video and writing a reflection paper. What's wrong with that? I don't come to class and I'm sick. I want to know what's going on. I want to be ahead. You're telling me you have something is wrong if I say to the students, watch the video to catch up to know what's going on within the class? I mean, what is wrong with that? No, tell me, guys. Tell me.
All right. In regards to what you stated, what I was going to say before Mrs. Robertson started is that if it is a case that, for example, my son gets sick 5-10 minutes before class, I'm rushing him to the hospital. I don't have the time to text or call until after I realize that he's settled maybe an hour into class. I text him and say, hey, I had an emergency. I'm at the